In studio, Jeremy Saltan, political strategist and advisor for the New Right Party, as well as Uri Zaki, Merit's Party Executive Board member. Uri, I want to get you just to jump off on what Owen said. It seems like a very reasonable and fair offer. Just 6 more months. I was initially trying to get 2 years, a full 2 years as a split unity rotation. I'm willing to be out of there by next summer entirely. Why is that not a good offer?
It's not a good offer. First of all, I completely agree with Owen's analysis. Look, Blue and White said they were not going to serve under an indicted prime minister. When the negotiations started, Netanyahu was not indicted. Along the way, he was indicted. It's a different situation. Plus, Netanyahu is not giving up on any of the conditions that make it almost impossible for Blue and White to join. First of all, being first on the rotation. Why should he be the first on the rotation? If he has a legal problem, why shouldn't he, postpone his premiership to in 2 years? Second is the block, and I think the block is even worse than this condition, because that goes under the mere idea of a unity government. Now, yesterday, Gantz had a proposal on the table. He said, you know what? Let's go to negotiations, serious negotiations, 24 hours negotiations for a unity government.
But give up immunity.
Give up immunity.
So, Jeremy, can you respond to that point? Why is that? That seems reasonable, too. We'll negotiate, and maybe even you can go first for 6 months, but you have to give up this push for immunity. You're a criminal suspect for bribery.
So that's a problem with saying that you want to have a negotiation without preconditions than having a precondition. I mean, the understanding that I have is Netanyahu is willing to go down from the 2 years to the 6 months in return for exiting the stage after he gets whatever measure of immunity. And again, there are different levels of immunity. I'm not going to get into the whole legal jargon there. But basically, again, 6 months, that's a good deal. It's not like the trial would start over the next 6 months anyway. If we are about to go to a third election, and I really hope that we're not, so Netanyahu is going to be prime minister for the next 6 months anyways. And really, he's going to have to explain that to his voters, Gantz, that he didn't go ahead and go there. But we have to look at Lieberman here, because Lieberman is the one that left the coalition over a year ago. Lieberman is the one that, instead of giving Gantz the chance to have a second mandate in the last election, decided to vote with Netanyahu to call another election. Then he made a decision not to choose any side, and it looks like if we go to another election, he's going to do the same exact thing.
We're going to continue this discussion after a short break, and also weigh in on the possibility of a Likud leadership contest coming up in the weeks ahead. All that and more still to come. And back here in studio with Jeremy Saltan and Uri Zaki. Gantz last week said that he trusts Netanyahu less now, just as a leader, than he did at the start of this process more than 70 days ago. There's less trust, there's less communication. Does this perhaps already indicate a third attempt at a unity government will fail? Is it too early to even start thinking about a fourth election next year and what we could expect in election round number 4?
I want to put 2 things. First of all, regarding Gantz's trust in Netanyahu. Imagine he would go into a government with Netanyahu, and Netanyahu would have, as a prime minister, as the acting prime minister now, with the legitimacy of Gantz, with this vicious campaign against the Israeli law establishment and the advocate general and so on and so forth. This for Gantz is impossible, and I don't think in the negotiations he could have seen anything else. I mean, he understood that this is Netanyahu's direction. That's probably why Netanyahu wants these first 6 months, in order to make a vicious attack on the Israeli legal establishment. With the prospects for fourth elections, look, it's as long as Netanyahu clings to power, and as long as there's no decisive result in the elections, it's a possibility. Netanyahu is the distortion in the system right now. Gideon Saar says that correctly. If Gideon Saar or Yuli Edelstein or anyone else from the Likud would have been leading the Likud right now, there would have been a unity government with rotation, with everything.
Okay, Jeremy, can you respond to that? And if we're going to a third election, does the right-wing camp, does the Likud party itself improve in the third election?
Well, we'll see, right? We only know what the polls say today. On election day, it might be something else. But I'm hearing Uri, and I just disagree with so many points. First of all, in a democracy, of course, you're innocent until proven guilty. And it seems like everyone wants to decide.
You want to decide
that Netanyahu is guilty before he's even been put on trial.
Indicted.
So again, we're not exactly at the full indictment process. We still don't know which court he's going to be in front of.
Jerusalem.
We don't. So again, it depends, as you know, whether he's going to exercise his immunity or not. But that's not the point. The point here is
I didn't say that. I said that politically,
so what you said,
the deadlock, the distortion that leads to the deadlock is Netanyahu's presence.
Right. So that's something I want to disagree with you, because I talk to my friends in blue and white, and I say, listen, let's say Gideon Sa'ar is the head of Likud. Are you going to go ahead and change any of your demands? Is everything really just personal? Is it really only on Netanyahu?
It's not personal.
So they say they tell me they're still going to move forward with their thoughts on the bloc. They're still going to move forward with their thoughts on religion and state issues. If you talk to Gideon Sa'ar, he's not willing to budge on these issues. So you're talking about the same policy positions, but you're just talking about a different face. So I just don't buy that. And I want to go back to this idea that Gantz thinks that he has a right to go first. Number one, the largest party is Likud.
No.
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to go through it right now. Likud is the largest party. Israel Resilience, which is led by Gantz, is a much smaller party of 14.
The Likud is historically Cherut and liberals. Come on, it's ridiculous.
And if you want to talk about blue and white as a faction, Likud together with Hayamin HaChadash is now the largest faction in Knesset. Besides that, you also have the most recommendations with Likud.
This is exactly why he lost
this is not games. These are actual facts.
These are just games and space.
Likud has the most recommendations.
No.
They have the biggest bloc.
No.
They have the largest faction. They have the biggest party. And besides that, it's also the incumbent prime minister. And it is accustomed that the incumbent prime minister is the one that continues if you're going to split it.
Yes, of course. These are the results of the.
So again, you're choosing
not that I think
ignore.
that it's so important, but that's what Jeremy is showing here is exactly the problem with the Netanyahu's era. It's making truth very flexible. The elections.
That's the truth.
It's true that nobody won these elections.
Go to the Knesset website.
But blue and white is bigger than Likud. By the way, it doesn't mean that they have to be first. I think the reason they need to be first is because of Netanyahu's indictment. And if it makes so much sense for him to take care of his own legal business and then go into power, and for them to be serving under Netanyahu with an indictment plus a vicious campaign against the Israeli legal establishment, they just can't do that.
I wanted to turn to the future of Likud, because we are facing the possibility, likely the probability in the next few weeks, there would be a leadership contest within the Likud party. Netanyahu main rival within Likud, Gideon Sa'ar, giving reporters today a tour and pitching himself as the best man to lead Likud into the future. Here's what Sa'ar had to say.
In one sentence, my purpose is to compete in the primaries and to win. And in two sentences, we need to always compete in order to win. But we also need to respect the democratic decision that has been made.
Jeremy, Sa'ar has hammered home for about 2 weeks now the simple fact that Netanyahu had two elections to try and form a coalition. He failed twice. There's no reason to think at all that in the third election he would succeed again. And it's time for the party to move into a different direction, because the chances of success with coalition negotiations is better with me, better with someone else. That's someone within Likud. Could that argument win in a leadership primary, a leadership contest?
I just don't see Gideon Sa'ar winning this primary. He's only been endorsed by 2 additional MKs. We see the fact that he himself signed on the signatures for Netanyahu to get the third mandate. The support that he has is a soft support. I don't see anyone else going up against Netanyahu besides Gideon Sa'ar. Gideon Sa'ar announced by accident on a trick that Netanyahu pulled on him already about a month and a half ago. And then, of course, he had to officially declare once we saw that we were going further into the 21 days and into this process. But when it comes down to it, Sa'ar just does not have the ability to lead Likud. And it's an internal Likud question in terms of if they want to go ahead and remove Netanyahu or not.
I want on the center-left side, if we head into a third election or a Meretz party, the Democratic Union, Labor, there's a lot of questions for certainly another election, a third within 11 months, very expensive, and a lot of questions about mergers or breakups, questions, of course, about a possible Labor new merger for the third election. Do you think that will happen? Do you think it's necessary? And where does Meretz fit into this? Perhaps to try and make their mark in another election.
Right. First of all, I think it is. It makes sense at least. I'm not sure it's necessary, but it's
For
that would be
financial reasons?
No, for political reasons. First of all, there's the ideological reason. There's no much sense. I mean, labor and blue and white, historical labor is the same place where blue and white is today. So there's no real raison d'etre for labor to be on its own. There should be a big left-wing party between the joint list and blue and white. Also politically, because of the threshold, both parties, both Meretz or the Democratic Union and Labor on the polls are showing it around 4 to 5 seats when the threshold is 4 seats. So there's a kind of a necessity there. It doesn't mean that both would not cross. I mean, according to the polls, they do cross the threshold, but they're on the verge of crossing it. On the other hand, I do know that 2 leaders of Labor, both the former one, Avi Gabay, and now Amir Peretz, don't want this merger. They stated it only today. Number 2 in the Labor Gesher list, Orly Levy, said that she has a big ideological gap between her party and Meretz, and she can't see such a merger. Not even a technical block. I don't know what's going to happen. Also, within Meretz, we need to make our own decisions. At the end of the day, the Democratic Union that's supposed to have that was supposed to grow Meretz left Meretz only with 3 seats when 2 seats went to other factions that are not really parties. We need to decide whether we continue with this, whether the list will stay the same, including the question of the chair, which, according to the Meretz statute, has to be re-elected.
It's a big question, of course, with a 12-week, very short campaign. Big questions that have to be answered. On the right-wing side, Jeremy, we have other right-wing parties, and they have to decide as well. We have the defense minister, the interim defense minister, Naftali Bennett, who weeks ago said, well, if there is a third election, we're going to run independent of Likud. That was a few weeks ago. Could that change for Naftali Bennett? Could that change for Ayelet Shaked? What's as we head into a third election campaign?
Right. So, and I was there when he gave that speech a couple weeks ago, and he said very clearly, Hayamina Chadash is an independent party. We're going to run alone. We are open to possible additions and running on a joint slate, and we'll examine that if we need to. We don't know yet if we need to. We're still at a point where, at least I'm praying, that before tomorrow at midnight, we do have a government. If we do have to go ahead and sit down at the negotiating table with other parties, we'll examine what the possibilities are. But our plan right now is to run as an independent party, and based on all the polls, we're getting a minimum of 6 since Naftali Bennett has been named defense minister. And I think a lot of his achievements in the 4 weeks, it's 4 weeks from today that he was appointed, I think a lot of those achievements speak for themselves.
All right, we'll have to leave this discussion here. Jeremy, Uri, thank you so much for being with us, and certainly another dramatic day of Israeli politics.